once again, I'm going to start the stream with "It's been too long." If you've been here before, you've probably heard me say that before. Um, so yeah, it's going to be kind of a bit of everything, I think, depending on how much time I have. But let's start first with that intro. We're doing a conference, finally. So for the people that have been following me a little bit longer, in 2020, we were going to do a conference, an art conference before, and that obviously didn't happen because 2020 turned out to be kind of a weird year. Let's put it that way. And well, I don't know. For me, it sort of always kept going. In 2021, we did a virtual version, but even though that was fun, I think it was four of us organizing. We kind of got a little bit burnt out on it. I mean, obviously, it was a really weird time for everybody. Um, and it kind of kept nagging at me for the longest time, and I thought I was kind of done with it. But then, towards the end of last year, a couple of things changed in my life, and some opportunities came by, and I basically had to, you know, reckon with the fact that I still want to do this. So it's going to be one day. It's going to be really interesting. Yeah, it's called a community arts summit. It's going to be a bit of 3D, be a bit of everything. We're going to have all kinds of artists. We're going to have a cool after party afterwards. Yeah, if you want to do something interesting, we're trying to keep it as affordable as possible as well. Please, please, please take a look at the website. There's not much on there yet. We still have 7 months to go. But yeah, we're going to have a bunch of fun. The tickets are pretty early. They got like a super early bird thing going on right now. Take a look if you're interested. If you think you can make it, please, please, please be a part of it. Yeah, I'm really excited about this because I think it's going to be super, super interesting. So, with that being said, hello everybody. Thank you for joining once again. I see people are excited. I'm excited to be back. So good to see you all. Thanks all for jumping in. Um, and yeah, there's a couple of things we could do today. So many things I've been working on. Jesus. So either I can make something from scratch. I had made a really kind of crappy scan earlier today. Some crappy scans that I was thinking of doing something with to do some posts for promo for the conference, so we could do some Blender stuff with that. Or if you guys want to have a look at what I've been doing in Godot with the real-time VJ set, if you've been following on social media, I've built basically a VJ set in Godot in the game engine. I can show some of that. So yeah, let me know, you guys, in the chat what you prefer. We just blendering all night, or we want to do something else. Yeah, the little promo video at the start that you saw that I introed with, I can show you how I did some of that. Like, I'm super flexible. That's just a really fancy way of saying I don't really have a plan for today. I'm just really excited to stream again and to talk about the conference and the stuff that I've been doing. So, yeah, let me know what you guys want to see. And if I don't hear anything, if I don't see anything, I'm just going to start importing a point cloud and messing with it. And we'll see where we get from there. So, alrighty. Let's see if this point cloud actually got synced to begin with, because that would be typical. Where did I put it? And it looks like somehow it did not get synced because I turned off my computer right before I left. Typical. So, okay, so we'll do some Blender stuff. There goes my plan. Let's see. I could start by. I still have the photos. It's gonna be a little messy, but I can import them again, and then. Wow, typical. As always, I'm extremely well prepared. Okay, well, you know what? Let's just throw that all out the window and do some cool geometry node stuff. So I'm just going to drop in the logo for the conference, and then just kind of go from there and see if we can do anything at all, which is going to be fun. So I have a logo here that I can import that I've created before. Make it a little bit bigger. All right. Nice. Blender, dealer's choice. Okay, so we'll do a bit of Blender first and see how far we get. And if that doesn't really go anywhere, then yeah, we'll go from there. Then I might open Godot as well, because I think there's some interesting stuff going on in there as well. So I have this logo that I created. As you can see, the geometry is amazing. I don't have to turn on wireframes at all. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know. And here we go. Let's actually switch over to the Blender view. That'll be better. So, so this is the logo for the conference. And I'm just going to try and build an interesting social post, like a little loop or something. So Instagram is always the same thing. Let's see if we can make a cool animation. See if I can make something loop. Oh yeah, there's something I've been messing with. That's going to be fun. So this is kind of my default setup nowadays. Yeah, I've kind of gotten hooked on geometry nodes, so it's going to be cool. Just checking where my axes at. All right, perfect. So I'll start with a little trick I figured out the other day to do kind of, let's see if I can actually, is this still open? Ah, perfect. So let's see if I can find the shot here. So on this one, this is kind of cool, the way these particles move. I'll loop this so it actually plays. So this isn't actually a simulation. This is completely controllable, which is interesting. And I'm going to see if I can maybe make that loop somehow. I think that might actually be loopable. It's going to be kind of a mess, but yeah, okay. No, actually, that's probably a really good one. So just, I'm mostly talking about these particles. This is just some, yeah, basic, real basic geometry with a whole bunch of displacement shaders on it. So, but yeah, I'm really just talking about the particles here. So actually, let me pause and quit Resolve real quick because I've been having some issues with the stream earlier, but it should be fine now. So let's see. So first of all, let's actually set these up. So the simplest way just to get like a cloud of points is to start with a volume cube. And then we can distribute points in the volume. There we go. Now let's give it a bit of density, maybe a bit more. This is the first time streaming on this computer as well, so if something's wrong or whatever, let me know and then I'll fix it. I saw my last stream was like 5 months ago, so I'm a little rusty, as you can imagine. And we're going to set the point radius a little bit smaller so we can see what we're doing. So, yeah, usually you could build a simulation, but because I want this to loop, and let's say I want to make this 8 seconds, it's like a pretty decent, so 8 times 24, there we go. That's kind of a good setting. We could do a little bit more if we have to, but. And then let's go from here. So now that we have these points, we kind of want to scatter them in like a cool, yeah, noisy pattern, I guess. I mean, we've all been there. Noise and CG. It is the cornerstone of anything procedural. Let's add a camera as well so we can just look at the camera view while we're working. Something like that could work. There we go. And then let's go back to the nodes and set this up. Actually, let me set my camera up so that it's dark. There we go. And I recently learned a really fun shortcut. So you've got Alt-Shift-Z to turn off your overlays up here. But if you want to get rid of your little, your axes, you've got control and then tilde, it's called. It's next to the 1 on a QWERTY keyboard, and then you can get a completely clean viewport, which is something I had been wanting for a while and only recently found out that that's the way to do it. So there you go. So let's actually start with a repeat node. So while I have messed around with simulations, it's kind of hard to get them to loop properly because you can't really export them correctly right now. They're still very basic. So I was messing with particle simulations in Houdini a while back, and they have a looping node, and you can very easily read the same cache twice and then offset it. So that way you can loop stuff and loop simulations really easily. But in geometry nodes, it's not possible yet. It's something I want to, hopefully they'll implement in the future. But so with the repeat node, what we're going to do, we're going to add a set position node, and then in the offset, we're going to use a noise texture and then hook that up to the color. Now, if we turn off normalize, the color will be between -1 and 1, rather 0 and 1, which means we're going to get movement in all 3 axes really nicely. And the cool thing is, if we now up these iterations a little bit and bring down the scale, and we make it a bit bigger, you're going to actually start seeing that pattern. So if we set this to 40 noise, we can now animate this. So you get a controllable animated simulation, I guess. It's not really a simulation because if I hit play, nothing really happens. But we can very easily manipulate this. So you get a kind of a really interesting looking thing. You can mess with the scale a little bit. You can add more detail to it if you want to roughen it up a little bit. And it's really just a case of getting creative. Maybe some distortion. And now you can see it kind of looks like a simulation. So actually, let's animate this from maybe 0 to 1. Let's go from there. There we go. It's kind of interesting. Maybe bring the scale up a little bit again, so it's a bit more relevant. I think it's animating way too fast, so let's try that at like 10% speed. Maybe bring the scale back down again. There we go. That looks kind of interesting. The only problem is that we're going to have to make our letter a bit bigger. That's fine. Move the camera back a little bit. And then we could even push it up a little bit further, make it a little bit faster again. And now we've got a cool sort of looping simulation. Mess with the scale a little bit. That looks kind of cool. So obviously this doesn't loop yet. So how do we loop? Control Alt space for an ultra clean viewport. Oh yeah, to get the full screen. Yeah, that's true. That works too. This is distortion help. Makes it a bit more funky. There we go. We can mess with this. So I don't know if I've done this on stream before. So there's a way to loop noise textures, which involves creating 3 of them. So this is going to be a little bit boring. I think I might have done this before, but it's fine to do it again. So now that I've got my speed set to something that I like, I want to find a good way to loop this. So I'm going from 0 to 0.25. So this one, the one we're actually looping in, is going to go from -0.25 to 0. And then just very quickly, if we go here and we just do a mixed vector. Now they're 50-50, but let's say I'll animate this one from 0 to 1, just to illustrate that it works. And now you get a noise that basically loops because we've got the same offset, and by the time this is at frame 0, this one goes back. But you can see it kind of like slows down a little bit and then goes a little bit faster. And there's an more interesting way to mix these so that that effect is a little bit less pronounced. And it's very subtle, but if you've got fast moving objects, you might actually still, you can really see it kind of warble and do weird things in between. So one of the things that I do is I'll actually create a 3rd noise texture. And let's see if we can visualize this. So if we have the clouds and turn this back on. So I'm going to animate this one going from 1 to 1.225. So it's going the same speed as the other one. And you can kind of see it change a little bit over time. But the cool thing is, if we add a math node here, and we subtract, and actually I'm going to turn on normalize, so it goes from 0 to 1. So now you can see it goes from 0 to 1. If you want to be completely correct, you can add a map range between that as well. Because in Blender, the normalized noise, the black and white noise, goes from 0.25 to 0.75. So now with this one, I know I'm going to have values that are completely black and completely white. And then with this add node, if I set this to clamp, it's going to clamp the values between 0 and 1. And you can very easily set this to -1 and animate it. So let's set a keyframe here. And at the end, set this to 1. Actually, let's do this on the last frame. And what's going to happen is those values that go from 0 to 1 are now first being shifted by 1. So they're going from -1 to 0. And because we're clamping it, they're all at 0. Then in the middle, they're just going to be from 0 to 1. And by the time we've added 1, they're all going to be above 1. So they're going to be from 1 to 2. So what that means, if you animate this, you actually get a mask that animates as well. And because we're animating the W value at the same time, it actually animates the mask moving. And I think we're going to have to animate these up a little bit faster. But that means we have a noise that is being used to mix the noises. So certain parts of it are actually going to mix in first, so you get a noisy movement within the noisy movement when you mix it, and you get less of that weird sort of in between two noises effect when you do that. I found this works pretty well. So let's ramp this up a little bit and actually go from, let's say, 1 to 1.5. We're going to do the same here, go from 0 to 0.5. And you can mess with these values. They don't necessarily have to be exactly the same. I don't know why I put a keyframe here instead of here. So let's clear that. And go from -0.5 to 0. There we go. And now it should be moving the same. So now you get like a simulation without actually having to do any sort of simulation, which is a lot of fun. If you want it to be a little bit, if you want a little bit more control, then my cursor, I tried to figure out where I could have my cursor stop doing the make it bigger when I shake it, but I didn't have enough time, so bear with me on that one. So generally, I'll just put this down to a value, and then we can hook them all up. And it gets a little bit messy, but that's fine. So now we can control the noise of the scale of all the noises together. We can do the same with the detail. Make sure we hook them up to the right ones. And then even the lacunarity or the distortion, I'm just going to do the distortion. There we go. So now we have looping noise that we can control from one point, so we can mess with it to get an interesting value. You can see it's not super fast. Oh, this is going at 24 frames, so that's nice. And then we can mess with the distortion to see if we get more interesting patterns. I kind of like those swirly patterns a little bit. So there you go, how to do a looping simulation without actually simulating anything. I don't know how useful that is to anybody, but I do like it. The more you repeat the iterations, sort of the stringier it tends to become, so you can mess with that as well. So if I bring that down a little bit, obviously for every iteration, every frame is going to have more calculation. And in geometry nodes, there's this cool thing where you can turn on the timings, which is really nice. So you can see how long each node is taking. So you can see right now the repeat is taking about 13, 14 milliseconds. The moment I up it, you can see it's going higher and higher and higher. So did that just jump? It's not looping anymore. Okay, so did I mess something up? Let's see what's going on here. So this one's at -5, that one's at 0.5. Our values are correct. Interesting. Is anything, oh yes, one of them isn't connected. So if we connect the distortion here, that's the problem. There we go, now it loops perfectly. Always fun when you stream something and you're like, hey, look at how you could loop stuff, and then it doesn't work. So 5 iterations is okay. Maybe you can try 4 just to keep it a little bit faster. There we go. And I'll start answering questions in just a little bit, and then we can up the density just to get more of them. But even still, even if it's not real time, you can see, let's put it at 10,000. You can really, really push it. And this will still render pretty quickly. Now I'm going to see if I can make the logo a little bit bigger. And it's maybe a little bit too big, something like this. And I mean, it's not a real simulation in the sense that it doesn't really collide with anything, but yeah, I'm at a point now where I'm making a lot of promo videos for this thing, so things need to go fast. So I'm not too worried about can you see whether it collides or not on the ultra compressed Instagram video. There we go. So this is pretty cool. And just by upping the density or bringing it down, you can have more or less particles the way you would with a normal simulation. But I kind of like the way it looked. So let's see. And obviously, the bigger the delta of the W values is. So if, let's say you're going from 0 to 1, it's not only going to move faster, but the shape is also going to change quite a bit more. So we can try that actually and see what the result is if we push it even further. So this one's going to go from -1, and the other ones are going to go to 1, and then this one to 2. And this one, the one that we use for the mask, doesn't necessarily have to be the same. But I find it's just easier to remember what I'm doing if I normalize them the same way. So it's stupid cursor, stop getting so big. So now you'll see, because we move through the W value, the particles move a lot faster. And this is at 24 frames, so this is what we're going to get. And you can see it looks really cool, and you don't have to deal with simulations and tracking things like age or whatever. And let's up this to like 10,000. And while this is slow, let's see if we can set this to drop frames. We'll get a real-time low FPS version. So this looks kind of cool. So let's see what we can do for shading. Also, yeah, one of the things that is really fun about this, and I'm just going to add a very simple light real quick, just to have something to work with. There we go. Let's see if there's a couple of questions. Leighton asks, can I buy my old setup? Right now, it's not doing anything. So if you're interested, let me know. We can figure something out. I've actually listed it on a secondhand website because I'm not. The reason I switched to a new computer is that thing is still insanely powerful, and for some things I miss it, but because I was doing some real-time stuff, the Threadripper CPU only went to like, I think it's like 3 gigahertz or something, or 3.3 when it boosts, which means if you're trying to do like 60 frames a second or 120 frames a second in a game engine, it's just too slow on a single core. So I had to switch to a CPU that has a higher clock speed with lower cores. But it's been fine so far. There we go. This is already looking kind of interesting. Maybe have the light a little bit smaller, but coming from the front. And the reason the logo here is on the darker side is because it already has a shader on it, which I can set to white. So you can see how that immediately adds some generally interesting stuff. So, and then the second part of that question was, do you still use Linux for Blender? Yes, I'm still on Linux. I think I've gone full neckbeard, and I've switched over to Arch even. I had to get I use Arch, by the way, in there, I guess. because of the newer CPU and stuff, I wanted to get like a newer kernel and other things that were up to date that would work with some newer components. Because I also now work in an office. I'm renting an office space in the city, so I'm not always working at home. So I'm having to manage two computers now, which is also very interesting, which adds its own set of new problems. But yeah, that aside. So one of the things I wanted to say was if we set this point radius down to 0.005, we can get it a bit more like pointy, I guess, a bit less thick. But one of the things is if you're actually doing a regular simulation, you would have your points and then add new points in for every simulation, or you could start with the same points and then you don't really have the problem that I'm trying to describe. But generally, if you're working with a simulation, you're trying to add things in or do more like a particle simulation where maybe particles spawn over time. If you don't do that, you can give every single point like some values to play with in shading or for other things, and they will stay the same throughout this setup, which means when you loop it, they're not going to like change size over time or something. They're just going to stay the same. So this set point radius, rather than put it here, what we could do, and that's actually kind of cool too. We could add a random value at the 0.005, 0.01, and then we can have them have different sizes. So some of them are a bit bigger, some of them are a bit smaller. Let's see if we really overdo it. Something like that. That's interesting. Almost feels like styrofoam that's like falling apart, flying around. So we could potentially move this up a little bit. Ooh, I like that, where it's actually not shaded. But I don't know if that's going to be interesting enough. Let's see. Also, because this is not, and I'm going to save this before you can see the amount of renders I've made here. It's been going kind of crazy. Let's see. What am I going to call this? D points. I need to clean up this folder real bad. It's been very much sort of stream of consciousness working on this. It's cool, but I don't really see the definition of the letter. So what if I bring this up a little bit? Let's give it a little bit. And what if I make this black again? But it is able to at least have a little bit of reflection, something like that. I don't know. It's probably best white to stay white anyway, so we can see what we're doing. The whole thing with the conference is that the style, because I'm doing all the logos and everything. Oh, I'm going to talk about that later as well. That's really fun, how I created the logo to begin with. The styling of it is all monochrome, so I'm kind of leaning into, I guess, the stuff that I've been doing the most over the years. I always kind of return back to black and white CG. I really like that, and I figured I would just go whole hog and make the conference, make everything black and white, which is a challenge in itself of its own. Now also, because this isn't a simulation, you don't have to worry about motion blur not working well or whatever. Oh wow, suddenly a whole bunch of comments just show up. There you go. So yeah, sorry if I wasn't answering questions. I just had like 10, 15 comments show up here. So yeah, I can already see somebody actually asked about motion blur. So there you go. So you get motion blur for free, which is awesome. You don't have to deal with it, and it just works. There's no issues, because really when you think about it, all we're doing is we just have a fixed amount of points in space that we're moving around. We're not really doing anything other than moving their positions, so the motion blur gets calculated really easily. So yeah, as you can see, it works just fine. Points render insanely quickly, which is awesome. And let's see if we can mess with the roughness here a little bit of the logo. Don't know if that's going to make a huge difference because there's a crazy normal map on it. Doesn't make much of a difference. Let's set this back to the normal. And let's actually see. You can see it has these like, it's not, no, I don't even know if you'll be able to see it on the stream, but I want it to have like a grainy structure. There we go, something like that. And again, all these details get lost on social media anyway, so I don't know why I keep doing this, but I can't help myself. So this is kind of a fun trick if you want kind of a weird normal map, and we don't need the bevel because the bevel is actually already in the model. So to get kind of a crazy normal map, again, it's just a noise texture plugged into a normal map, and then because it's so small and it has all these colors, is it technically correct? Is it a correct normal map? No, not at all. But you can get kind of interesting, an interesting effect where it almost feels like it's kind of like a sandblasted surface or something like that, as long as you don't look too closely. So that way there's a little bit of texture. So that went way faster than I expected. Yeah, let's see. And actually, let's render this out, and then I'll bring it into Resolve, and while it's rendering, I can answer a couple of questions. So it's an EXR. I tend to render things at like 80 or 75% of the resolution that I'm going to use anyway, just because honestly I can. It's not a big deal. And lately, the last year or two, I've been using lossy compression in the EXRs. It's still floating point, and I haven't really noticed any issues when like grading it really hard even. And the files are really small. They're smaller than JPEGs half of the time, but you still have a lot of information. So that's really good. So let's see how quick we can get this render time, and then I'll start answering some questions. So 3 seconds, we can get that faster. I believe we can get it faster. So 0.01. Let's do 128 samples and then see if there's a lot of noise still left. A little bit, but what are we down to? 2 seconds. Okay, maybe let's do 256 and then just start rendering that. Set a path maybe. Folder CG render, and then what did I call this? D points loop. So D points loop. Oh, let's go back up. There we go. And just standard is fine. Do we need to add a little bit more lighting? Let's just add a little bit more so it's a little bit brighter. There we go. I kind of like that. It's a nice contrast. And let's render and answer a whole bunch of questions because they just popped in here. So let's see. I'm going to go way back to the beginning. So Igor asked, interested about your scripting Blender Python experience. I did that a few years back, pre-geometry nodes, to do some stuff, and it was fun. If you go look through some of the older loops or the older videos, I talk a little bit about it. It's cool. If you know a bit of Python, you can get into it quite a bit. It's like one of those things where in the beginning, it's a little hard to get into, but once a few little things click, then it works really well. So Linux question, I answered. I was wondering where you had been. Big love to you. Thank you. I've been busy. I mean, life, man. It's crazy. There we go. Distortion not connected to all 3 noises. So Robert spotted it, but I didn't. I'm sorry, I didn't see the comment because they only popped up later. So do the points get motion blur? Yes, they do. We talked about that. Would it be possible to create stringy loops out of this setup via points to curves or something? I've always wondered if it's possible to simulate ropes / cables with collisions in geometry nodes. I'm sure somebody's done it, but it would be a lot of setup, I think, and you'd have to use the simulation nodes rather than this. You could maybe fake it with like a geometry proximity and a distance fall off, but it would never look as good as a proper simulation, I think. But you could do it. The points to curves node is really fun because it's going to connect all the points to curves, and you can get really weird kind of shapes, almost like, oh, this is going to date me, but What's that old screensaver with the lines that kind of bounces in the corners, and you have these lines, these colored lines that are connected. Anyway, if you're an old fart like me, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Um, Points to curves by default creates a single curve with all the points. Yep, but one. Actually, that's what I was going to talk about it. So cool. So Heinz and Robert are talking about the points. So you want to separate them. So yeah, you'd have to. What you could do is you could assign the points with like random IDs. So you could do a random value with an integer, and then let's say do from 1 to 10, and then you have 10 IDs, and then it would create 10 separate curves, and it would connect the ones with the IDs. The points to curve node has an ID node that you could use for that. Um, but yeah, so let's see, I'm going to follow you guys' logic, separating the points into several chunks and then reconnecting the points within that chunk or something. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Collisions is tough. It's a lot of math. That's where I'll be honest, my math skills aren't up to scratch to be a geometry nodes wizard like Simon at the Blender Studio or spacing on his name. Arendelle, for example, people like that, they have a better understanding of math than I do. So my laziness in math class in high school fails me, unfortunately. I do a lot of hacky stuff instead. But you can definitely do it. I'm sure you could do it. But the question isn't if you could do it, I think. The question is whether it's worth it. Because if you go to something like Houdini, you could set it up pretty quickly and it would work really well because it's got those solvers built in. But yeah, could work, could work. Maybe try lighting from the back and have a volume in the front of the D to capture the God rays. Yeah, that could be cool too, from the light streaming through the D and the particles. Also have the particles not cast shadows into the volume. Yeah, all great ideas, but we're already rendering. Sorry, but thank you for the suggestions. Long time. Where you been all this time? Like I said, life, man. Being a dad is fun, but it takes a lot of time. So I don't want to do it right, which is important. Yeah, and then since sort of the end of last year, beginning of this year, figuring out this conference stuff, where it's all going to go. Yeah, but one of the things, well, actually, I could talk about that a little bit. One of the reasons I finally ended up going for it is because a friend of mine, he manages event locations, and he gave me pretty much a really cool deal on a really cool location. So there's going to be 3 separate stages or rooms or whatever you want to call it. I'm still deciding what I'm going to call all this stuff. We can have different speakers on at the same time. There's going to be about 500 attendees. So if you want to be one of the 500, check out the website and make sure you get a ticket in time. But yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be digital art, and it's going to be quite broad. So it's going to be a little bit audiovisual. We're going to do a lot of talks and stuff during the day, and then in the evening we're going to do an after party with a bunch of audiovisual shows and things. We're going to go all the way. So, oh, I don't know. There we go. So let's keep going. Do you not use denoising at all? No, it's funny. The conference is called Denoised, but I generally almost never denoise anything. I find that if I denoise something, to get the denoise not to look like warbly and bubbly, you generally have to put the samples up quite high. And then you're rendering for a pretty long time to get a denoised result anyway. What I've been doing and what I've done for a long time, honestly, is render it at like 75% scale like I'm doing here, and then just upscale it in the video editor. And then the noise becomes slightly bigger and it almost kind of looks like film grain. And then if you mask it with film grain, you can't really see it anyway. And denoising, it always takes away detail. I prefer a noisy, more detailed image over a sort of a smoothed out, whatchamacallit, kind of crazy image. That being said, going back to the name of the conference, the reason I called it Denoised is kind of a personal thing. On social media the last couple of years, I really enjoyed using it for a long time, but the amount of sort of AI slop that's been popping up. I'm sure you've all seen it if you're in the creative space. It's just horrific. Let's put it that way. And I kind of want to cut through the bullshit. I want to get back to the artists and get back to people showing stuff they're passionate about and showing how they build things, how they create things, and why they do it, and kind of get back to that idea. And that's why I'm calling it Denoised. I want to cut through the noise of social media and a lot of the other bullshit. So yeah. Yeah, so Robert says, what? No motion blur for free? How? Like I said earlier, because they're just points we're moving in space, the motion blur is calculated perfectly and we don't have to worry about it, and it just works. So people are referencing, geez, that's a lot of chat. It's been a while. Cartesian Caramel also has some amazing math stuff on his channel. Yes, I think he's called Ben in real life. I'm not sure. Great YouTube channel. He does these like hour-long streams where he builds stuff in geometry nodes from scratch. The most amazing, like super advanced stuff. Cannot recommend it enough. I have learned so much from that guy. Seriously. Are you still doing point cloud scans? Could you show some new stuff? I've kind of eased off on the point clouds a little bit because I'd been doing them for a few years and I kind of got sick of it, if I'm being honest. Actually, today is the first time in a long time that I went out scanning again, and I thought the scan files were synced from the work computer. I processed them earlier at work, but they weren't. So I wanted to do that. But hey, look, it's a good one for next time. So, but I'm getting back into it a little bit. I looked at Gaussian splats and things and nerfs and all that stuff, and it's interesting. But the plugins to render them still seem fairly basic. I was looking into it a little bit again today. I still just like point clouds. I like the look of them, but they're really, really cool as well. So there we go. So if you're up for another Nerd Blender question, been trying to grow cloth like flowers, etc. lately via soft body, grew a mesh in geometry nodes along a curve, exported it and re-imported the alembic. But then when combined with soft body, it never respects the original animation, creates good collisions with objects around it, as I would love to. Did you work with soft body as well? I loved your cloth stuff. Actually, I've messed with soft bodies. I've tried to use them, but I've never really gotten them to work the way I want them to. So let me turn off the render here. Let's go to resolve. So generally I do everything with cloth, I guess. I always use cloth, but I have magic cloth settings, and I can show those. I can show those in a little bit. If you want like really swirly, cool stuff, there's a few things you can change that makes it a lot of fun. Like, I don't know if this one's in here. Oh God, this is all such a big mess of things. Yeah, this one, for example, this is all just Blender cloth. Oh, stop it. So this one's Blender cloth, and to get like all those ripples and things, there's a couple of settings you can change, which is cool. Am I actually Belgium based? Yes, I am. I am from Belgium. I'm from Antwerp specifically, which is why the conference is going to be in Antwerp as well. So I'm trying to get, instead of going to other places, I'm just trying to get everybody to come to me, which I'm very lazy, but I don't care. So let's set my input transform correctly here. So I've been using a lot of aces lately, and then actually this is the wrong one. No, that's the right one. Let's create a new timeline and set it to 1080 to 1350 for Instagram. That's fine. Color is set to aces. Perfect. Now we set it up. This is one thing that the new Resolve does when you create a vertical thing, that it changes your UI. If anybody from Blackmagic is watching, this is a terrible idea. Just leave the UI the way it is, because now I can't have my effects and my media pool at the same time. That's really annoying. Just saying. So now I've got everything in Resolve. It's a little less punchy because we don't have the AGX transform, but we can start grading this. Mm. So I'll do 2 more questions and then we'll keep going. Don't want to advertise, but the Turbo Tools add-on has a denoiser that can keep details at even 12 samples, even textures. That's fine. I don't mind. If it's a good tool, people should check it out for themselves, and if it's any good. Yeah, I haven't heard of it, so let's have a look together. Turbo Tools Blender. Cool. All right. Let me open this up real quick. Okay, that is interesting. All right. Well, I'm not going to get into it now, but it's good to know. Like I said, I've been out of the loop a little bit. I'll be honest, because of all this stuff going on. It's like I have to make a choice. Either I can make art all the time, or I actually have to do things. So it's been a bit more doing things lately. So I've been a little bit out of the loop. So, but it looks cool. So thank you. Actually, I don't care if you're the developer. Hey man, plug your stuff. It's fine. So, all right, I'm gonna grade this a little bit, and then I'll answer the rest of the questions. Get back to that. So, like, this is what I mean. This is incredibly annoying. I can't resize this. Now it's tiny. How am I supposed to judge my grade if it's freaking tiny? Anyway, that's, other than that, Resolve is great. Don't get me wrong, but this is annoying. So now I have this tiny thing, but so I have this tiny sliver because I can't actually resize this, which is really weird and annoying. I don't really understand why they did that. Can I pop this out? I can't pop this out, can I think? No. Okay, fine. It is what it is. Then we'll switch between the views. So one thing I've been using a lot lately is this film look creator. So it's basically all the hip effects in one. I'm going to go clean slate here so I can run through it a little bit and talk about it. So it is really just to create a film look. So you have this like easy look you can apply, but because I want everything black and white, I don't really mess with that. We have a bunch of basic controls like control, exposure, contrast that you can mess with a little bit. But really, the ones that are really nice are these subtractive saturation and richness if you're working with color, but we aren't. And then the other things like halation for like the filmic highlights. Yeah, for the black and white stuff, it doesn't work all that well, but you can get kind of a nice little glow around your highlights around it. And there's a bloom in here as well, which works pretty well. Just to highlight that up. And generally, I'll kind of do a bit of a grade before that. I'm just going to go in and just maybe boost the gain a little bit. Just push it up a little bit. There we go. And then we can bring our glows back down because now they're completely over the top. So the bloom is kind of nice, but I don't know if I agree with the halation. Turn it off. And we've got blown out highlights here, which isn't what I want. So if I bring these back down here, maybe I push the gain a little bit too far. There we go. Maybe we can just push the shadows up a little bit instead. That's nice. Let's go back to our other view so we can see what we're doing. And I think what I'll do as well is, I don't like that black background. Generally, I would render this with volumetric. So if you see it show up on social media and it's a little bit lighter, then I might have re-rendered it with volume, but we can kind of fake that a little bit now with the grade by just bringing up the black levels. And then we'll have to compensate by bringing the gain down a little bit again. It's okay, but I wouldn't call this finished, but it's kind of fun to see the process. And the final one, and this is the one that I really like, is the grain. And you can't really see it in such a small thing, but again, you've got presets for different kinds of grain. But the thing that I like about it is not only do you get grain, I'm going to desaturate the grain here. It doesn't have to be all that much. But what I do like is it's got a softness slider, which just kind of takes the harshness off, the CG-ness off your render. a little bit as well, which I like. But again, this is all personal preference. So I'm just going to set this to the default 35 millimeter and then bring the saturation down. So that's a fairly acceptable result. I would maybe just bring the gamma down a little bit so we have a little bit more contrast. We could even mess with the contrast if we wanted to, just to have a little bit more of a pop. There we go, that could work. And there's our final little loop. So there's still a little bit of highlights here that are blowing out, which I don't like, but I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm going to re-render this in a little bit anyway. But yeah, there you go. Looks pretty cool. I can see there's some points popping out here at some point. Let's see, can we see them? No? Yes? There we go. 2 points, 2 straight points. You bastards. Actually, I kind of like that. It's kind of funny. It looks like they kind of appear in between the crack, or like disappear between the crack, which is fun. There we go. Happy accidents. That's what it's all about, eh? So that's that kind of done. That's that kind of workflow. I was going to talk about something else. Yes, how I designed the logo. I think that it's more of a 2D thing. It's less Blender and more 2D, but I think it could be fun to talk about that as well. So let's see if I have this installed to begin with, or I have to download it. So yeah, so this app called Dithering, D-I-D-D-R, D-I-D-D-R, and if you type in GitHub, it's a command line application, and I'll actually paste it in the, there we go. So the UI thing can be changed on the top right of the timeline. If you're referring to resolve, oh my God, you're a legend. Thank you so much. That is so much better. I hadn't found that yet. Henrik, you're the man. Thank you. This is so much better. Oh my God. Unfortunately, in the grade module, it doesn't look like it'll do it, but yeah, it's better than nothing. Thank you so much for that. I hadn't found that yet. That is awesome. So there we go. So what this does, it's a little command line application that this person wrote, Make World. I don't know if they have their name on it anywhere, but they are also a freaking legend. That you can download and you can run, and you can push images through it, and it will dither them with different patterns. And once you start looking at the where is the, I'm looking for the releases, the man page. There we go. You can see the amount of stuff you can do with it. There's all these different kinds of dithering, which is super interesting. So you can set it to be colors, you can set it to be all kinds of stuff. So if we take this background image, for example, I'm just going to grab that. Is it this one? Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to just copy this so I don't mess it up. And I'm going to put this in a little folder in my temporary directory, and then we can open the dither. So if you download it, once you download it, it's a single executable. I believe it is for all platforms. So let me just have a look. So it's for FreeBSD, Linux, macOS, Windows, so you can use it on all platforms. And then you could run it. And here you can see I've already run this before. And let me just increase the size of this so you can actually read it, make it a little bit bigger. So what's cool about this is there we go. What's cool about this is you get you run the little thing, and then you run all the different flags. So what I'm doing is I want the palette to be black and white because I want everything to dither. Whatchamacallit? I just want to dither in black and white. You can have color palettes. You can do all kinds of stuff. It's truly amazing little tool. And then my input is I just have the folder. I always use the same structure. I'm going to add dash out. So you could, for example, you could dither an entire sequence. So if you want to do like a frame sequence or something you rendered, you can dither it and have it all dithered out, which is really cool. So I have an in folder, which is the images going in. I have an out folder for the images going out. And then you can set the brightness, the contrast, whatever, and then you can set a width and a height. If you just set the width, it'll automatically adjust the height and vice versa. And you can have different Bayer patterns and things. So for example, if we do a standard 2x2 Bayer pattern and we just hit it, and there's something wrong, no matches for. I'm gonna just do this. Ah, there we go. That works perfectly. Then you can see I get that same thing. Oh, but I'm gonna change the width to maybe be 2K and then set these to 0 so we're not messing with it. And then redither it. It just overwrites it. Let's see. And it's kind of working, but not really. So let's mess with the brightness and the contrast. This might not be the best image to do it, although it should work. I'm going to up the contrast. Ah, there we go. That looks better. And then you can get all these really cool, interesting patterns. The Bayer pattern. So the one that I had, I think 4x16 is similar to the one that I did with the logo. So you could stretch it and you can make it look really interesting. So now you see the image in a different way. Let's see if we bring the brightness up a little bit and do it again. And let's say you could set this, it has to be multiples of powers of 2. So if you do 4x32, then you get these really long lines. And because we brought the brightness up, it kind of dithers the darker parts as well. But you can see how you can really play with it. And that's kind of how I ended up with the logo. Is it in here? Yeah, here are the dithers. So basically I created just the original logo. This is still, these are older ones, but you get the idea, right? So I created basically just a white to black gradient for the logo and then ran it through that tool and tried different combos to see which ones I really liked. And I think this is the one I ended up using, where you can see, yeah, I'm doing them really small so you can use the pattern and things. And then I brought that into Inkscape and I basically just drew over it just to keep things simple. Sometimes you just gotta go for it. This is a different one. This isn't the one. I think this is actually the one I ended up using. Looks like it, yeah, because it's got the little dots here and the weird thing on the S. So yeah, really fun. I don't know if there's other ones. And then for the other one, I just did, yeah, I just did the same thing where it's just a D or, you know, whatever the base logo. And then I had a gradient going from transparent to black, or I don't even remember exactly the thing, but basically you can read all of that. And then you get these really interesting dithering patterns. And by stretching the Bayer pattern in one direction, you get this stuff. Then there's another one, which I might have to look at. This is just a standard Bayer pattern. Yes, I've gotten into things like dithering. If this isn't your cup of tea, I apologize, but I find this stuff really fascinating. Where is the man page? There we go. You can have different types of dithering as well. So these are all ones that exist. These are the built-in matrices, and then these are, if you look at the details, oh, okay, this is just code. But yeah, there's basically different ones. So let's say if we do Atkinson dithering, and we do the same thing and we go back, then you can see the pattern. It's almost snake-like. And so they have different dithering patterns you can use depending on your image. Stuff will show up and look better. So yeah, dithering is really, really cool. So, so yeah, that's that. And I did promise I was going to talk about cloth very briefly. I'm not going to do a full project, but I'll at least show you some of the settings that I tend to use that makes it like that wavy and stuff. So we're just going to use a cube, and then we're going to create a plane for the cloth. And then make it maybe 5 times bigger and subdivide it a bunch of times, but not too much so the cloth isn't too slow. That should be okay, but let's just for the sake of it keep it like this and then do it with a subdivide modifier. That way we can always go back if we have to. Let me just turn on wireframe so you can see it a little bit at least. Add the subdivision surface and set it to simple and turn off optimal display. So if this is slow, we can always throw that out. And let's add the cloth. So for a simulation like I was showing earlier, what I tend to do is I tend to pin the edges. And the way you can do that is just by creating a vertex group. So let's call this edges, assign this. So if you look at your vertex paint, or no, sorry, weight paint, you can see it's a group. And then in the cloth settings, you can actually in shape, and I might make my UI a little bit bigger for this so you guys can see it a little bit better. Let's see if we close this, make that a bit bigger, and then close this. Oh, close it. I'm still getting used to the new resizing. That way it's a little bit clearer. So with that pinned, we can pin the edges. And now for me, generally when I do cloth stuff, by default, I have gravity turned off in my startup scene because I want to start from 0. So yeah, I just turn gravity off because I want to add all the forces myself. So if we open up a timeline here, you'll see that it's simulating nothing's actually happening. If I were to turn on gravity, then nothing's really happening either, but that's fine. But what we want to do in that specific example with the logo, I play with the pressure quite a bit. So where are we? If we turn on pressure, let's say turn it to like 2.5 or something, and then you can see it kind of bow out. Now we haven't turned on collisions either. So let's go back to our collisions. Let's up these ever so slightly, turn on self collisions so the cloth can collide with itself. And then all we need to do here is add a collision to the box, to the cube rather. Now these ones, obviously they're called soft body and cloth, but these are actually really interesting. You have to make sure that your thickness of the collision is it bigger or smaller? I can't remember if it's bigger or smaller than the size of your polygons. So I tend to set this pretty small. There we go, and I think I've just proved my own point. So if I set these to 0.1, do they collide correctly? Now it collides correctly. So it has to be bigger than the polygon. But one of the things that I really like doing, you can see it's like, it's okay, but it doesn't, you don't get all those really cool folds and other things. And one of the things that is very counterintuitive with cloth is if you look at these words, you say tension, compression, whatever. So the higher or these are like the other way around. So for example, no, the other way around, what's the best way to put this? So let's say if you want the cloth to bend a lot, then you have to actually turn this down because it's the amount of dampening happening in the bending. So here as well, it's how stiff it is within the bending. So to me, that's always been super counterintuitive. But basically what I do is I turn all of these down to 0.1. And then when you hit play, you can see, oh, that's not supposed to blow up. That's interesting. I think the pressure is just way too high. Let's see. Yeah, but you can see immediately that the cloth is a lot more like bendy and weird and funky. Obviously, you need a lot less pressure. So if we turn this down a little bit, and then if you want a lot of like wrinkles and super crazy detail, the other thing, and just say this is shade this smooth so it looks a little bit nicer. The other thing you can do is in the stiffness of the edges, you can turn that down to 0, and then you'll see the edges are going to stretch a little bit more. In this case, you don't really see it as much because I've pinned all of the edges. Generally, I might only pin a few points depending on the setup, but the shrinking factor is my favorite one. So if you set it to 1, the cloth isn't going to do much because it's trying to contract, because it's trying to shrink wrap. But the fun thing is you can set this all the way down to -1, and then the cloth initially, it's almost like it's shrunken and it's going to try and open up. So you'll see this creates a really weird effect in the beginning, but because the area of the cloth is actually larger than the original polygons, because it's assuming that it's already shrunk and it's unshrinking them, you can see how these folds really become a thing. And that's a lot of fun. And depending on how much time you have, and I'm just going to save this real quick in here, just in case we lose it or whatever. Although cloth is pretty stable in my general experience. You can immediately see how that goes. And then the fun thing about doing this with a subsurf modifier is if we now set this to 2 and do the same thing, the simulation's obviously going to be a lot slower, but you're going to get way more folds and things. So what I'll do is I'll try and simulate it at a lower resolution to just kind of get the correct feel. And sometimes you'll see it sort of explode. And when that happens, what you want to do, it's not happening in this case, but what you want to do is set the collision distance even smaller. Because it means that the particles, or the collision distance in this case internally is larger than the polygon, and it can't internally sort of resolve that. So if you set this smaller, generally this is at like 0.005 in a lot of the scenes that are about this size that I'm working. It's all size dependent, obviously. You see it's smaller, but look at all these crazy cool folds that you're getting. Just by setting up the cloth to be actually shrunken when it starts and unshrink when it doesn't start. So even if we turn off the pressure, and I'm just going to turn the subdivisions down a little bit, you can see it unshrinks. So this is without pressure, and you can see the way it like tries to push out because it feels like it's already shrunken, and you get these really cool folds and things. There you go. So you can get a nice kind of interesting looking cloth simulation. So it's a combo of all those things, setting these down lower. You could mess with the air viscosity as well if you want it to be even more flowy. So the air viscosity kind of also dampens it as it moves through the quote unquote air. The lower you set it, the more like flappy and even wilder it's going to become. But yeah, then setting the shrinking factor lower than 0 is really fun. And then one last one, which can be really cool. If we turn the pressure back on, I'll show you a cool trick as well. This is a very old school trick. If you've seen my streams in the past, you know this trick very well. So we're going to create a new pressure vertex weight. So if we look at it here, and then what we can do, if we add a vertex weight edit modifier, but after the subdivision, so it does it on the subdivided polygons, we can select the vertex group, the pressure vertex group. We're going to add, and if we turn this fall off to invert, basically now what we're doing is we're adding a value of 1 into that group dynamically. And then if we change the influence here, we can have a mask texture, and this is some real old school stuff. I like the distorted noise, always have, always will. And now we're dynamically creating a vertex group within Blender, which is really cool. And I'm just going to up the colors, going to up the brightness a little bit, so we make sure we have some stuff that has 100% pressure and other stuff that doesn't have any pressure. And you could do this with pinning, you can do this with stiffness, with all kinds of stuff. This is a really nice way of quickly adding that in. So now I've got that, and one thing, let's say you want to loop this animation because you know, you're a crazy person like me and need to loop everything all the time. There's a very fun trick which we can use. Oh, no, let me go back to object mode real quick. And this is going to be probably a little bit too fast, but that's fine for the demo's sake. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to set the X rotation. Oh, yeah, and we might have wanted to turn off the simulation there. Let's set this to 360. There we go. I'm just going to turn off the simulation for a sec so we can see what we're doing. So in the weight paint, you can see nothing's happening. But what we can do is we can have the empty. If we set this to object, we can have the empty actually dynamically change the vertex paint, which is really, really interesting. So if we combine that now with, what's the best way to do this? We could do it with pressure, but it's actually better if we do it with pinning, and I'll show you why. We'll do it with pressure first. You can add pressure, but have it only use that vertex group. And now you'll see the pressure gets added in that group. And because it's moving, the pressure gets added differently all over the cloth. So you get even more broken up kind of looking things. But my favorite thing to do with it is we have that pin group, the edges. If we go back here, I'm going to create a new one called pin. And what we're going to do is we're going to edit those vertex. We're going to mix them together. So I want edges. Oh no, how am I going to do this? No, edges is fine. Actually, I can keep that one. That's fine. I didn't need the pin one. But I'm going to also add the pressure in. And rather than replace, we're going to add it. I always forget how to do this. Yeah, there we go. And that way we still have the edges pinned, but now we have parts of the cloth dynamically being pinned as well. And you'll see immediately that also looks super interesting because now some of the cloth is going to stay in place and it's going to pull on it. So the pressure is coming everywhere. And I think we can actually change that. We can remove the pressure group. And as we simulate this, even though there's pressure on all parts of the cloth, some parts are being pinned dynamically, so they're returning back to their original state. So you get these really interesting, crazy movements. And because we've got the collision still turned on, it's still interacting with the cube. This is actually one of my favorite setups for cloth because it gets super wild, and you can see as the vertex group pulls them back, the cloth gets kind of crazy, and we'll be able to see it in real time here in a second. And by just messing with the vertex group, and I wonder, no more comments, which is fine. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Now you can see it has this really crazy effect. And, you know, it was pretty quick to set up. And once you get the hang of it, you can do so much cool stuff. Blender's Cloth Simulator is actually one of my favorite tools in Blender. It's fairly, I don't want to say basic, but it's fairly straightforward, and you can do some really, really cool stuff with it. Some other things that I do as well is maybe bring down the speed multiplier, and then it's a lot slower, and it's a really great way to sort of fake, just have it move slower through time, which is interesting. So here you can see that effect of the vertex group even more, but the mesh doesn't blow up as much because the pressure doesn't have as much, you know, time and influence. So you get a bit of a subdued effect, which is really interesting. Sometimes you'll get stuff because it moves so quickly when it pins. Sometimes what you'll get is you might have to up the quality steps and the collision quality a little bit just to make sure that it doesn't self-intersect. But even then, you know, it's fine. But yeah, here we go. This is definitely one of my favorite effects. And you could create a vertex group with geometry nodes, I think, but it already has to exist for it to work. Maybe they fixed that, but I know in the past, let's say if you created this plane itself through geometry, so if you start with like an empty object and then you create the plane in geometry nodes and then try to assign a vertex vertex weight to it. I don't think it always works. So in this case, this is why I started with a plane that's just modeled and then do it the old school way. But you could do the same thing with geometry nodes, I think, if I'm correct. But yeah, same idea. It's just different setup. But if it works, it works. And then the reason I set this to rotate 360 degrees is because I'm super lazy. And this is a very quick and easy, dirty way to loop it. So generally what I'll do if I want to loop the simulation, I'll have it run twice. So it's the pattern is the same 2 times, export it to like a point cache, and then just have the point cache kind of mix in between. I've done a loops video way back when where I explain it, where it's basically exactly the same thing. So Maxwell, you're asking about the ripple-like effect in the cloth. This is exactly how I did it. The thing that I've just shown. So you can always rewind and have a look at it. But basically it's the same idea. The only thing that's different, the ripple-like effect, so it goes outwards. I'll open it up. I think that might have actually been a geometry node setup. So I'll open it up so I can show you exactly. I just need to figure out what I called it. Emblem cloth. That looks like it might be the one. There we go. So it's the same. That ripple it's exactly the same idea where we have the, is it this one? Or is it this one? That's the one, but this already has the mesh cache on it, so it's going to be plane 01 that has the original simulation. So again, this is a modeled plane. You can see the vertex count is really high, but if we go look at the weight paint, you can see the weight paint in action, and you can see exactly what's happening. So I believe the pressure is using this, and then the wave itself, that's the pinning. So it's basically just the inverted version. And I do believe I did this one with geometry nodes. So let's have a look at that really quick. So this is exactly what I was talking about. It's a wave texture in geometry node. So if we go back to the object, so you create the empty, the empty group first. So if we turn off the geometry nodes really quick, these two, and we go back to the weight paint, you'll see the wave is empty, and then you can populate it. If you make an output, you can populate it by using a wave texture. So in this case, I'll see if I can run through it real quick just for the end of the video. There we go. That's it. And the cool thing about the wave texture is if you just offset the phase, you get that effect of it rippling out. And a good thing to know is if you create a wave texture, again, this is because I'm in the business of looping things, but I just want to show this for the sake of completion. If we just do a regular wave, and I'm just going to do rings on the y-axis, let's say if we scale this down, if you want a perfect loop from, let's say, 0 to 1, if you key the phase offset at 0, and then you go to the last frame plus 1, so if you want to loop something perfectly, you've got to make sure that the values are the same at the first frame and the frame after the last frame. The phase offset works in, is it radians? I think it's radians. So if you do pi multiplied by 2, you'll see it's exactly the same, and you get a perfect loop through the wave. So then even if you add distortion and more details and you mess with the scale, for example, it's going to run through that. It's going to run through one band perfectly. So this is going to loop perfectly no matter what. So that's really fun. The wave texture is a really fun one to easily loop things. I think it sort of skips because there's other calculations going on. I think the cloth may be doing stuff. I don't know. But anyway, just to give you an idea of how it works, that's how it's done. So I hope that answers your question. I'm going to answer the last. If there's any last questions, now is the time. But I think we're going to end it here. So thank you for joining. We're going to look at this beautiful creation while I'm answering the last couple of questions. So let's see. You could suggest this to Blackmagic Design on their support page. Okay, I might actually do that. That's not a bad idea. In DaVinci Resolve, how do you make panels full screen? In particular, the Fusion node panels. I can only seem to get the video panel to full screen with the P key. I know there's the cinematic view, viewer mode, the cinema viewer, Command F, and then you can have it full screen. I hope that answers your question. That's usually what I do. In the grading tool, you also have Alt F, and then Control F. I believe Alt F in the other view, if you don't have a vertical timeline, or a vertical, what you would call it, composition, then yeah, you can get a bit more space on the top by disabling a couple things here and there. But yeah, Control F for full screen is usually the one I use, but especially for these vertical ones, my second screen is on the right here. Well, as technically it would be on the right there, and I have a vertical monitor, which I use to put stuff on, but it's really nice for when you're doing 9:16 or 5:4 or 4:5 content for social media. You can have a look at it on a second monitor, which is not a very practical tip, unfortunately, because you need a second monitor, which, yeah, if you don't have one, I realize not everybody has a second monitor, so I'm sorry. But yeah. Okay. But yeah, making panels full screen, I think like the individual panels, I know with this button you can pop them out, for example, and then when you close it, it goes back to where it's supposed to be. So this one, you could pop this one out, but that one doesn't actually pop out, which is kind of annoying UI-wise. That's kind of stupid. But for some of them, I think this is the main one that most people use that put on a second monitor or something. But yeah, that's a bunch. I'm still learning a lot with Resolve. I've been using it for a while, but there's definitely, it's like Blender. It can do so many things, and I feel like I've only scratched the surface. So, all right, last couple questions. Find dithering really cool and interesting. Thanks for the dither tip. You're very welcome. Long time no see. I know, right? Always, always. Yay, always a sucker for cloth. Well, okay, I hope you really enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of cool stuff I was able to show still. So, alive and live. Yes, I'm still alive. It's true. Okay, we did the ripple effect. People are saying thank you. Okay, I think I'm gonna end it here. So yeah. Yeah, if YouTube does the thing again where a whole bunch of comments suddenly show up, I'm sorry if I missed your comment, but I'm pretty tired, so I'm going to end it here. I hope you have a really great evening. See you later. Yeah, see you soon, hopefully. I'm gonna commit, actually, I'm commit to it on stream. I'm going to try and do more of these the next couple months. And also go Nice. Managed to absolutely not nail the ending, but there you go. Come to the conference. It's only $50. Antwerp is a cool city. You'll love it. See you around. Have a great night.